Syria right now, it's at like this really pivotal moment.
Yeah.
Its future, it hinges on whether they can have a genuine national dialogue.
Right.
One that can address all the deep divisions and the wounds of the
For
past.
sure.
But can they actually have a successful dialogue after so many years of conflict
Right.
and so many broken promises?
Yeah.
I mean, is that even possible? That's what we're diving into today.
Okay.
We're going to be exploring this article by Jamil Diarbakerli.
Okay.
He's the executive director of the Assyrian Monitor for Human Rights.
Interesting.
He's arguing that Syria's future depends on this national dialogue.
Okay.
But are Syrians ready to embrace the challenges that come with that?
Well, and that's what's so interesting about his perspective. He
Yeah.
doesn't shy away from all that historical baggage, like
Right.
all these times they've tried to have these national dialogues.
Yeah.
And a lot of those were orchestrated by the former regime.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just for show.
Just for appearance?
Just a facade of unity
Wow.
while silencing anyone who dissented.
It's like those meetings where everyone's nodding along.
Totally.
No one's really saying what they think.
Exactly.
You get the sense that this time it needs to be different.
It has to be.
How do they avoid repeating those mistakes?
Well, that's what Diarbakerli's article really underscores.
Okay.
This time around, the table needs to be so much bigger.
Yeah.
And it needs to be way more representative of all of Syrian society.
I mean, like everyone.
Yeah, we're talking about everyone.
All the groups.
Assyrians, Druze, Ismailis,
Oh.
Sunnis, Alawites, Kurds.
It's a long list.
It is a long list. Turkmen, Yazidis, Armenians, Arabs, everyone.
Wow.
This has to be about acknowledging the full spectrum of Syrian voices.
And perspectives.
Yes, perspectives.
It's
yeah.
like trying to make a tapestry.
Yeah,
You need all the different threads to get the full picture.
for sure.
But it's not as simple as just getting everyone together in a room.
Right.
It's about being willing to hear those voices, right?
So-
Even the ones that might make you uncomfortable
Especially the ones that make you uncomfortable.
or challenge your views.
Exactly.
That's when things get interesting.
Yeah, Diarbakerli actually highlights two key challenges.
Okay.
The first one is what he calls the knowledge gap.
Okay.
A lot of Syrians from different backgrounds don't really understand each other.
Oh, interesting.
They rely on stereotypes and assumptions.
Right.
And that just fuels the division.
So bridging that gap is critical.
Absolutely, through education and just open dialogue.
Okay, so it's about fostering empathy
Yeah.
and understand.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you even start to have those conversations?
Right.
Especially after so much pain and mistrust.
It's a really delicate process.
Yeah.
The second challenge that he highlights is engaging with the people who supported the old regime.
Ooh, that's tricky.
Yeah, this is where it gets really complex.
Yeah.
Because it brings up the question of accountability.
Right.
And forgiveness.
I bet that's a point of contention
Oh, absolutely.
for a lot of people. How do you balance the need for justice
Right.
with the need for reconciliation?
Well, Diarbakerli says engaging doesn't mean condoning those past actions.
Okay.
But he's arguing that understanding the motivations
Yeah.
and the perspectives of the former regime supporters
Yeah.
is crucial for preventing future conflict.
So you're saying it's about understanding why people did what they did
Yeah.
without necessarily excusing the actions themselves?
Right. It's about recognizing that there are complex human stories
Mhm.
behind those political alignments.
So where do you even begin with that kind of conversation?
Well, that's where this concept of transitional justice comes in.
Okay.
It's a framework for societies that are coming out of conflict
Right.
to help them address past atrocities
Yeah.
and build a more peaceful future.
So it's not about revenge.
No, it's not about revenge.
Retribution.
No, it's about telling the truth,
Okay.
acknowledging the harm that was done,
Right.
and finding ways to repair things
Yeah.
and prevent future violence.
Transitional justice.
Yeah.
It sounds like it requires a deep level of honesty
Mm-hmm.
and a willingness to face some uncomfortable truths.
Absolutely. It involves legal mechanisms for accountability,
Okay.
but it also emphasizes the need for truth and reconciliation.
So imagine a space where the past can be addressed openly and fairly,
Yes.
where victims can share their stories.
Mhm.
Perpetrators can be held accountable,
Yeah,
but also contribute to this shared understanding of what happened
exactly.
and how to prevent it from happening again.
That's the goal.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But Syria's situation is so complex.
It is.
Are there any examples from other countries
Yeah,
that went through something similar
there
that
are.
could give them some guidance?
Diarbakerli actually points to South Africa
Oh, really?
after apartheid.
Yeah, that was a huge undertaking.
It was monumental.
Didn't they offer amnesty to some people
They did.
in exchange for full confessions?
They did. And it wasn't a perfect process.
Right.
But it does offer some valuable lessons.
Okay.
The commission focused on uncovering the truth
Yeah.
about the atrocities committed during apartheid.
Mm-hmm.
They offered amnesty to those who confessed their crimes,
Okay.
and they provided a platform for victims to share their stories
Right.
and receive reparations.
So it wasn't just about punishment?
No.
It was about understanding and healing and moving forward as a nation.
Precisely.
So what's the key takeaway from that?
The key takeaway is that transitional justice has to be tailored to the specific needs
Oh, okay.
and challenges of each society.
Got it.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
This is all so complex,
It is.
but it feels like it's crucial to get it right.
It is crucial.
We've talked about the challenges of dialogue,
Yeah.
the need for inclusivity,
Mm-hmm.
and this idea of transitional justice.
Right.
But where do we go from here?
Yeah.
How do you actually turn all this talk into change on the ground?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's one thing to talk about it.
Right.
But how do you actually make those changes in Syria?
Yeah, how do you put it into practice?
That's where Diarbakerli gets into the specifics.
Okay, so what does he say?
He outlines a few key outcomes
Okay.
that a successful dialogue should aim for.
Let's say we've gotten everyone to the table,
Right.
and there's this sense of trust.
Okay.
What are those concrete steps?
Yeah, what does success look like?
What needs to happen?
He says one of the most crucial things is a new constitution for Syria.
A new constitution.
Yeah, one that really protects everyone's rights.
Regardless of their background.
Regardless of their background, their beliefs.
Okay.
He emphasizes having a democratic system
Right.
with checks and balances.
Make sure power is shared.
Yeah, so that no one group can dominate.
Or silence the other.
Exactly.
That's a big change from how things have been.
It's a huge shift.
What else does he say?
Along with that new constitution,
Yeah.
he says they need a new government.
A new government, too.
That reflects the diversity of Syrian society
Okay.
and is committed to serving the needs of the people.
So moving away from those old power structures.
Yes, embracing a more inclusive approach.
That's a massive shift.
It is.
How would that even work?
Right.
Would it include members of the old regime?
Well, he doesn't answer that directly.
Oh, really?
He doesn't give a blueprint for the new government.
Okay.
And I think he does that on purpose.
So what's the point then?
The point is, those are the questions they need to talk about.
Okay.
It's about finding that balance
Okay.
between inclusivity and accountability.
Making sure all the voices are heard,
Yeah.
but also dealing with the past.
Exactly.
There's a real tension there
There is.
between wanting to include everyone and making sure justice is done.
That's where the concept of transitional justice comes in.
Right, you were talking about that earlier.
It's not just about punishment. It's about truth-telling, reparations, preventing violence.
And it has to be seen as legitimate.
Yes, by all sides.
You mentioned South Africa.
Yeah.
Could something like that work in Syria?
He acknowledges there are no easy answers.
Right,
The TRC was groundbreaking,
yeah.
but it wasn't perfect.
What were some of the problems?
Some people felt it prioritized the perpetrators
Oh, interesting.
over the victims.
Okay.
And some people got away with things.
By not telling the whole truth.
Yeah, by giving misleading testimony.
So they need to be careful
Very careful.
and tailor it to Syria.
Exactly.
But even with a good plan,
Right.
how do you make sure those goals actually happen?
That's a big question.
The new constitution, the new government, transitional justice.
Yeah, how do I make sure those aren't just empty promises?
How do you implement them?
He recommends creating independent bodies
Okay.
to oversee everything.
And make sure things are put into action.
Exactly.
These bodies would need to be transparent, accountable,
Moral representative.
to need power,
Real power.
to enforce the agreements.
Yes.
So who would be in these bodies?
That would have to be figured out through dialogue.
Okay.
But one thing is key.
What's that?
Preventing any one group from having all the power.
Right, like avoiding what they had before.
Exactly.
One of the biggest challenges has got to be the lack of trust.
It's huge.
I mean, these groups have been fighting each other for years.
It's going to be hard.
How do you even start to build trust after all that?
He says it takes a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
It's not just about big political agreements.
It's more than that.
It's about fostering dialogue at all levels of society.
So everyday interactions.
Yes.
Conversations with neighbors.
Colleagues, even strangers.
Creating a space where people can connect on a human level.
Exactly.
Sharing their stories.
Seeing each other as individuals.
Not just representatives of different sides.
Right.
That sounds like a long process.
It is a long process.
Are there any groups doing that kind of work in Syria now?
There are, actually.
Right.
There are a lot of Syrian-led organizations
Wow.
and individuals that are working on this.
What kind of things are they doing?
Some are organizing interfaith dialogues.
Bringing religious leaders
They're
together?
community members from different backgrounds
Understanding.
and cooperation.
That's great.
There are also groups providing support to people affected by the conflict.
Helping them heal and rebuild?
Exactly.
It sounds like they're laying the groundwork,
They are doing crucial work.
but it can't be easy.
It's not.
What kind of challenges do they face?
The biggest one is just the sheer scale of it all.
The devastation.
The devastation, the divisions.
Years of conflicts have left a mark,
deep scars.
and there are still security concerns.
In many parts of the country.
So it's hard for people to travel and meet,
It is. And then there's the political uncertainty.
which makes it hard to plan for the future.
Exactly.
So these peace builders are facing an uphill battle,
They are.
but they're doing such important work.
They are.
How do you measure the success of something like that?
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
It's not always about numbers or immediate results.
So how do you know if they're making a difference?
Sometimes the most important changes happen slowly.
In people's hearts and minds?
Yeah.
So changing the way people think about each other,
Building relationships,
creating a culture of dialogue.
that's the goal.
That's powerful.
It is.
But how do you scale that up to a national level?
Right.
How do those individual changes lead to bigger societal transformation? We've been talking about all these pieces,
Yeah.
like how to build a future for Syria
Right.
with dialogue and inclusivity
Mm-hmm.
and facing what happened in the past.
It's a lot.
But are Syrians actually ready for this?
It's the core issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Diarbakerli ends his article with a similar question.
What does he say?
It's a big one.
Okay.
He's not just talking about dialogue in theory.
Right.
He's asking if anyone's really ready to do this.
Syrians and those outside the country.
All of us.
That question makes me think,
Yeah.
how do any of us bridge these huge divides?
Especially after so much violence.
Yeah, how do you rebuild trust?
It feels overwhelming.
It really does.
It is a huge task.
Yeah.
But even with all that, Diarbakerli's article gives me some hope.
Oh, really?
He reminds us that dialogue isn't a one-time thing. It's not a quick fix.
The process.
It's a commitment to keep engaging, even when it's hard.
Even when you feel like you're not getting anywhere.
Exactly.
So it's a marathon, not a sprint.
I like that.
And you have to be willing to have the tough conversations.
And listen to other people's perspectives.
Yeah, even when they challenge you.
Or make you uncomfortable.
It's about acknowledging the past.
But not letting it control the future.
You have to find a way to move forward.
Exactly.
Diarbakerli says true reconciliation is about balance.
Mm-hmm.
Holding people accountable for what they did wrong,
Yeah.
but also being willing to forgive.
And to see the humanity in everyone.
Even people we might consider our enemies.
Because we all want a better future.
He also says dialogue isn't just for formal settings.
That's an important point.
It's about everyday interactions.
With your neighbors.
your colleagues.
Even people you meet on the street.
That's where real change starts.
In those small moments of connection.
Challenging your own biases.
Being open to learning.
Creating spaces for those endeavors to happen. So it's about shifting the whole culture.
Yeah.
Creating a society that values dialogue.
Not just for solving conflict.
But for building understanding.
Empathy.
Like weaving a new social fabric.
I love that analogy.
Thread by thread.
Conversation by conversation.
It shows that peace in Syria needs more than just politics.
It needs a change in how we treat each other.
Seeing each other's humanity.
Even when we disagree.
That's a really powerful idea.
It is.
So after all this, what do you think are the biggest obstacles?
To that kind of transformation.
Yeah.
That's the question we all have to think about.
Because there's no easy answer.
Is it lack of trust?
The pain of the past.
Fear of revenge?
Maybe people don't want to let go of their anger.
It could be a lot of things.
The bigger question is, are Syrians ready for this?
Are they willing to do the work?
Have those difficult conversations
Face the truth.
to create a better future?
That's what it comes down to.
We don't know what will happen.
But one thing's clear.
What's that?
Diarbakerli shows us that peace needs courage.
And compassion.
And a willingness to keep talking even when it's hard.
It's a long road.
And it's a journey worth taking.
Not just for Syria.
But for everyone.
Thanks for joining us today.
It's been a great discussion.
We hope this deep dive gave you something to think about.
And maybe even inspired you to start your own conversations.
About these important issues.
Exactly.